All right, so this is Romance Unraveled, exploring the heart of the genre. And I have a fantastic co-host for this session. AlTonya is on NC Live's Continuing Education and Training Advisory Committee. And when I found out that she was a romance writer as part of an NCLA presentation last year, I was like, how did you never tell me this before? And so I'll have her introduce herself.
Hey everybody, yes, so my name is AlTonya Washington. I'm a librarian and head of reference at Winston-Salem State. And yes, I'm also an author. I don't talk about that a whole lot. I mean, most people just don't even know it unless it just comes up somehow in the conversation. But I have worked with Devin before on other webinars. And so I was so excited when she asked me to talk about this because this is like, I love romance. I read across the board, as you can see from my slide here. I read a whole lot of stuff, but romance is what I started reading really way too young to probably be reading romance. But I told my mom it helped with my vocabulary, and she was like, okay, I'll buy that. But I've just always been an avid reader, and when I discovered writing, that was just the best. Again read across the board. I just finished book, I believe, 5 in the Vampire Huntress series. And this series was by L.A. Banks. She's no longer with us. She passed away a while ago, but she left behind a fabulous vampire romance series. So if you haven't heard of it, I think there's some other series that are called Vampire Huntress. So, but this is by L.A. Banks, and I just finished book 5. I think there are probably 12 books in the series. So, but that's where I am right now. So I'm going to stop talking so that Devin can get a word in edgewise. Thank you.
All right. Well, folks, if you haven't met me before, I am Devin Waugh, the instruction librarian for NC Live. And right now I'm reading Here for the Wrong Reasons by Annabelle Paulson and Lydia Wang. It is about a romance set with contestants in a bachelor style reality dating show. I'm a huge fan of reality dating shows. I've watched The Bachelor, Bachelorette for years. I'm not a huge sports person, so I like to say that reality dating shows are kind of like my version of sports. And so I felt like this book was right up my alley. Um, my doorways are predominantly setting and language across genre, and I'll highlight kind of how that comes through in the romance titles that I've included in this webinar. Some important links. So we have a link to the slides and the handout that I'll drop in the chat. You're welcome to follow along with these. In the handout, we've included a lot of resources that we'll touch on throughout the webinar, but we wanted to make sure you had a document that you could refer to after. And just an agenda before we get into the thick of this. We'll start off with background and key titles. AlTonya will highlight indie authors. I will do a novelist demo and share some resources in the platform. I'll include some tips for marketing and programming around romance genre, and then we'll wrap up with Q&A. But to start things off, if you could share in the chat, what romance titles and authors do you like? Um, all these that'll be shared in the chat, I'll include in the handout as well. But would love to know what you're reading and what you've enjoyed in the last year. Or if you want to share your all-time faves, that's great too. Marissa sharing Beverly Jenkins. Nice. Romantic suspense. So Nora Roberts, Linda Howard, Jane Ann Krentz. Dungeons and Drama by Christy Boyce. With romantic suspense, we'll also show you some tips for finding those titles in that subgenre and novelist. Emily Michael sharing not a huge romance reader, but I'm here to learn more. And I've really enjoyed Emily Henry. Joy sharing Funny Story by Emily Henry. I listened to the audiobook of People We Meet on Vacation.
Oh yeah, their partners, definitely. Oh yeah.
Nice. Allie Hazelwood.
Those some good ones.
Hmm.
Devin, you said you're making a list of all these.
Yes, I will.
Travis Baldry. Okay.
Casey McQuiston, Abby Jimenez, Rebecca Yaros. Rebecca Yaros is set to do an author talk at NC State, I think in January, and those tickets through Quail Ridge Books sold out in like
I
minutes.
bet. I bet.
And then if you could share in the chat, what romance titles or authors do your patrons like? So what are the ones that you feel like have come up pretty consistently? Because they might not be the same as the ones that you're picking out.
Oh yeah, Colleen Hoover.
Honeymooners by Christina Lauren. And that's something to think about too, is the format and what your library has. We'll cover
Mhm.
um, recommendations for audiobooks in Novelist. Colleen Hoover, Fourth Wing, an Icebreaker. Jennifer Armentrout. Yep.
Yeah.
There's definitely been a rise in romantasy.
Mhm.
Novelist has even recently added a new genre code for romantasy, so you can search specifically for those titles. All right. Thank you for sharing in the chat. So, what is romance? I wanted to start things off with kind of a good definition for framing this conversation and webinar. So, romance is centered around a relationship with an emotionally satisfying and optimistic ending. Um, if patrons aren't getting that in the book that they're reading, it's probably not romance. It might be a little bit more on the side of romantic suspense or a thriller, but that emotionally satisfying ending is a cornerstone of the genre. It's why people come back. And it's also important in identifying that when you're recommending titles. We're going to start off with a couple of subgenres. So for the recommendations, given the interest of time, I will not do a synopsis of every single title that we cover, but I can include synopsises in the handout. The first one I wanted to point out is You Had Me at Ola by Alexis Daria. So this is a really delightful romance that blends Hollywood drama with heartfelt emotion. After a public breakup, a telenovela star, Jasmine Lynn Rodriguez, is determined to reboot her image and career with a leading role in a bilingual romantic comedy. Enter Ashton Suarez, a telenovela heartthrob with his own secrets. Sparks fly both on and off the set as they navigate fame, family, and vulnerability. This book is a must read for fans of celebrity romance with depth and a touch of cultural richness. So this is a title for people who like romances that involve characters that are in like a Hollywood or TV media setting. Um, in terms of historical romance, Regency, you can search for Regency romances in novelists, but I wanted to highlight The Phoenix Bride by Natasha Siegel. This is set in Elizabethan England and primarily involves Jewish characters. So this is kind of more of a hidden gem in historical romance, different time period. And then for paranormal romance, Allie Hazelwood, author of Love Theoretically, and many other titles, has Bride, which is her turn in paranormal romance that has a vampire werewolf romance. Other subgenres, so sports is a really popular one. A great way to rope in readers who, might have been longtime athletes who may not necessarily think of themselves as fans of the genre because they're able to read a story about their favorite sport that they love or about athletes, um, you know, either in professional careers or recovering from professional careers in some form. As far as holiday romance, I wanted to highlight a recent title, Three Holidays and a Wedding. So this is set against a snowy backdrop. It is a dual holiday romance that's a celebration of love, traditions, and the magic of the season. So when strangers Miriam and Anna find themselves stuck in a charming small town over Christmas, Ramadan, and Hanukkah, unexpected connections blossom. With themes of family, faith, and second chances, this story offers a cozy escape and heartwarming moments that will stay with readers long after the holidays. It has a very feel-good, Hallmark-like experience with a bonus of multicultural and multi-faith storylines. So this might be something for your patrons who love holiday romance, or maybe even patrons who like romances centered on faith. Um, as far as romantic comedies, I really want to highlight this debut from this year, The Truth According to Ember by Danica Nava. She is the first traditionally published Native American author in the romance genre. This is a story where the main character, Ember is a Chickasaw woman living in Oklahoma City. And she has this little white lie that snowballs into something bigger. And apparently it's really funny. And it's on my TBR list. Now Tanya will share some of her picks.
Thanks, Devin. So what you'll notice about my picks are my core readers, core authors are in bold. And what I'm doing here is I relied on Devin to really talk about to really talk about the newer authors, because I'm a slave to my core people. Those are the ones that I just love, love, love. But I say this for those of you who don't read romance, as you know, that's just not your thing that you go to all the time. Find out who people's core readers are, because from there you can move forward and you can do searches to find out who reads like this person. I will say JD Robb at the top. I have the ellipsis there and no name next to hers because honestly, I couldn't find anybody, and maybe I just didn't look hard enough, but I couldn't find anybody that compared to JD Robb's in-depth series, which is my favorite. You'll hear me talk about that again later. But when you have an anchor, this is very important. So, you know, pick the brains of your staff, people who read across the board, not just romance, but they may have that favorite romance author in there that they love. Find out from them. Find out from your readers. You know, listen to your readers. You'll hear me say that again later. But these are my favorites. I will talk a little bit more too later about Iris Bowling, who is phenomenal. She is just amazing. I'll talk about her again later, as well as Karen Moaning and Larissa Ione and some of those read-alikes from them. Okay, Devin, thank you. So again, key series, again, JD Robb. I have some asterisks here that I want to talk a little bit briefly about. The Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, I read book 1 of that series, and it is classified as YA. And Devin had a question come through in the comments about what was the difference between YA romance and adult romance. And the biggest thing, and there are other things, but the biggest is that the love scenes. The love scenes are not what you would find in an adult romance. They're not that descriptive. However, you have to be careful with that. Some series, the characters age in some series, and Daughter of Smoke and Bone was one of those series that I found out from another reader as they were going through. It started off very YA, but at some point I believe it gets a little older. And I watched the show. The show on Netflix is phenomenal, so I did not finish reading the series. But those are some things that I don't know if Novelist allows you to be that detailed about what kind of love scenes do these have, but sometimes you just have to rely on people who know the series, who have read it, to get that insider kind of track on it. Then there's the Fever series by Karen Moaning. I don't know how many people have read that. It is a phenomenal series. There is one character in the series, I believe she's about 13. Her name is Danny. And she eventually has her own book. And as she goes through, something happens and she gets a little older, but it's not like years have passed. But within that, her relationship with one of the heroes in the series kind of takes a turn. And that was kind of I don't know, the readers didn't quite like what she did there. So things like that happen in series and you just don't know. So it's just kind of a good idea to, if you know that reader that reads a lot, pick their brain. That's all I can keep saying. Just find out what they know about this stuff because those little things are key and they will keep readers coming back to your reader's advisory desk. Okay, Devin, I'm done. Entry points into the genre. Devin did a really great job on adding folks here. At the romantic comedies, I did add Farrah Roshan. I don't know how many people have heard of her. If you haven't, put her name down on your list to find out more, especially those of you who are trying to add more inclusivity in your collections. She's amazing. I put one of her covers there at the top. But yeah, definitely look into her. Piper Hewley, for those of you who love Beverly Jenkins, she's kind of like the person that's coming, right there. And I know Miss Bev has like really like given her the nod. I've seen it. I've been in the room when they both been in the room. So I know that she really does like what Piper's doing. So make sure you put her on your list as well. The two genres that I did add were urban romance. I don't know how many of you have heard of any of these authors. Maybe most of you have heard of Wahida Clark because I think she's been around the longest. But these are some good names to start with and then see who else is newer out there. I believe Ashley and Jaquavis, they've been around a while. Quan, they've been around a while. So, but you can use these as a springboard to others. And then erotic romance, the only thing I wanted to say there is erotic romance and erotica are two different things. Erotic romance focuses on the relationship building between the two characters and that love that's going to come out of it. But the love scenes are all the way intense erotica type stuff. So that's the difference is that you're more focusing in on the romance of it, but the love scenes are going to be very, R-rated. So I put T Onyx there with a little X by it because yes, I too have dabbled in erotic romance. Another surprise for you, Devin. I'm pretty sure you did not know that. But yes, I have written some erotic titles. I did enjoy the genre. I wanted to just see if I could do it, and I did. And yeah, that's all I'll say about that. But yeah, moving on.
Awesome. Thank you. So we will get into themes. I think themes, the way they're categorized in novelists, can be a really powerful tool for romance, digging deeper in the genre, developing recommended reads lists, crafting displays, and programming. They're also known as tropes. So they're these popular recurring plot elements found in fiction. Um, for me, I know that I like a friends to lovers theme. Grumpy Sunshine is also a great one, or Forced Proximity, and I'll kind of explain a couple of those. But they're searchable in novelists, and they're different for YA romance compared to adult romance. This is an example of Forbidden Love by This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan. She's a UNC alum, and she actually gave an author talk recently in Raleigh. Um, so fake relationship. This is a common trope that I feel like doesn't really show up in real life very often. I know Christina Lauren was mentioned in the chat. This is another title of hers called The Paradise Problem. Close quarters is a theme that covers often like workplace romance or like the situations that the two main characters are involved in that are forming the relationship. Kind of, they might be uh, contentious at first, but then the relationship forms and it becomes romantic. Love and Other Conspiracies is on my list. It came out this year and it was pitched to me as what if the X-Files was a rom-com, which just drew me in immediately. So that's one that I'm hoping to get to in the next few months. Grumpy Sunshine. So this is one I was talking with AlTonya about earlier this week, and she had never heard it described in this way, but it is kind of like an opposites attract. It's a trope that pairs two characters that are polar opposites in temperament. So one is cynical, the other is optimistic, and there's often can be like a gender reversal. Like it's not necessarily always the male character being the cynical one, like the Mr. Darcy type character. Sometimes the female lead character is the cynical one, or also with LGBTQ romance, this grumpy sunshine trope can come up often. The dynamic creates tension, humor, and emotional growth, and the grumpy one kind of softens under the influence of the sunshine, while the sunshine learns to appreciate the grump's stability and perspective. The trope is really loved for its playful banter, heartfelt moments, and irresistible chemistry. Say You'll Be Mine by Nana Kumar. So Meghna, a theater teacher and aspiring playwright, agrees to be the best man at her best friend and secret crush Seth's wedding. Hoping to move on, she lets her parents introduce her to Karthik, a grumpy engineer wary of marriage. To escape their personal dilemmas, they strike a deal, a fake engagement to ease family pressures. As they grow closer, their unexpected chemistry turns into something real, but insecurities and expectations threaten their budding romance. So that's a great pick for the grumpy sunshine trope. So Friends to Lovers, this You Again by Kate Goldbeck. It's unmistakably inspired by When Harry Met Sally. So any fan of Nora Ephron or fan of that movie in particular will really enjoy this. It's a very touching and hilarious story of friends in New York becoming lovers, and it's such a masterclass in slow burn romance, but it has snappy dialogue at the same time. This book will resonate with anyone who believes in second chances and finding love in your best friend. And I found it was a really nice book to read around fall. It had a lot of cozy fall vibes and set in New York City. Forced proximity. So that often involves characters being set either in a situation like they're on a plane, the plane has to land early and they're stuck together in a hotel, or like they're snowed in for the holidays, or just situations where they're in close quarters. Sometimes that can involve, like having to share a room together or be amongst family. Second chances. So as the trope suggests, Slow Dance by Rainbow Rowell is a Reese's Book Club pick and a best-selling title from the last couple of years. Think Like a Reader. So this is one of my tips, especially for bringing in people who haven't read romance, or that's not necessarily in their wheelhouse, is having short blurbs that have pop culture references. I think my love of this genre came from the rom-coms that I grew up watching. So The X-Text by Erin Sterling is very much a practical magic meets Gilmore Girls. I'm a huge fan of Gilmore Girls. If you love the cozy magical vibes of practical magic and the witty small town charm of Gilmore Girls, this title is the perfect read. It's a spellbinding rom-com that follows Vivian Jones, a witch who accidentally curses her ex-boyfriend Reese during a drunken hexing session. When Reese returns to their quirky, magic-filled town in Georgia years later, chaos ensues and the two must work together to undo the curse. For fans of Nancy Meyers movies, so think It's Complicated, Something's Gotta Give, Nora Goes Off Script is very much in that vein. You're going to see a strong sense of place and detail. If you enjoyed Love and Basketball, which obviously, like, these movies have been around for a long time, but they are touchstones of romance. This is a sports title, Fumbled by Alexa Martin. She's written a bunch of sports romance, but that is one that I think for fans of that movie and other sports romances might like this one. Another key trend that's come up in the chat as well is genre blends. So one thing that you can do that I recommend is use the field code GN for genre, and then put in a subgenre like romantasy just to see all the romantasy titles in Novelist To find more romantic suspense, you can search GN romance plus AP suspenseful. I think you can even search the subgenre romantic suspense. And then you can also find for, genre blends that you might not be thinking about. You can add in GN science fiction or fantasy or whichever genre, and then add in the appeal term romantic because that will pull in a title that has a romantic plot to it. The Ministry of Time, this is a title that came out this year. It's a time travel romance, it's a spy thriller, it's a workplace comedy, and it's a very thoughtful exploration of the nature of power and the potential of love to change it all. It's packed with high stakes intrigue and romantic tension. This is perfect for readers who like a unique blend of adventure and love across time and are maybe not looking for those typical tropes in the genre. Um, the Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Ali Carter. So that one came out this year. It's a great holiday romance and might be a good fit for fans of romantic suspense.
So we wanted to touch on hybrid authors. And I went in and I also added multi-genre because you've got a lot of authors who, again, as the definition states, writing traditional and independently. And that was me for a long time. I started off writing traditionally for BET Books in their Arabesque imprint. Then I went to Harlequin and I was with them for quite a while, writing for their Kimani Romance label. But in the midst of me doing traditional publishing, I discovered independent. And so I was kind of doing both at the same time. But with multi-genre, you also have those authors as well who, as I have here on the slide, Alyssa Cole, I knew she was writing historical, but it wasn't until I did a program recently in October, I called Tea and Terror, and I was doing my searching to pull books for display for that event. And her title, When No One Is Watching, came up as horror. And I said, oh, wow, I didn't know that she wrote that. So if you have that kind of information, and you can share that with your reader, that is one of the things that will keep them coming back because they'll consider you being just very knowledgeable and they'll trust you and they'll want to get more information that you might have that they would probably have to search for a while to get. So it's always good to be up on what these writers are writing. As for me, I write in an array of different genres, and I do have several pen names. And a lot of that for the pen names, I mentioned T Onyx. I did that because I didn't want my readers who know me for romantic suspense to suddenly pull an erotica title, an erotic romance title, and thinking that they're going to get the same romantic suspense feel, and it's something totally different. So I write under two. In addition to T Onyx, I also write in under Allie Fleming, and that's where I do interracial romantic suspense. So just be mindful of what your authors are doing and who they're doing it for, because sometimes somebody may be writing romantic suspense across the board, but they may be doing it traditionally and independently. And just a quick sidebar. When you say traditional, that means you're writing for a publishing house. Why would you write the same thing independently? Well, with publishing houses, you have a lot of guidelines that you have to follow, things you can't put in the story because that goes against guidelines. But when you're independent, you're kind of like, you make all the decisions. So that's one of the draws as to why many authors choose to do both. Thank you.
Thanks, AlTonya. Another key trend that we wanted to touch on is Book Talk and Bookstagram, and these are three titles that have been really making the rounds. We'll also include in the handout some Book Talk and Bookstagram influencers that are useful for different subgenres in romance. Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. This is the first in a series. So Emmy Ryder is a competitive horse racer in the rodeo world. But after an accident from her last competition, she's left wondering if she'll ever race again. She then moves back to her hometown of Meadowlark, Wyoming, where she stays on her family's horse ranch and reconnects with her best friend, Teddy. She also gets closer to Luke Brooks, her older brother's attractive best friend, bar owner, and bad boy of Meadowlark. From enemies to friends, Emmy and Luke wonder if there's something more between them as they face their own troubles and their attraction to each other. So this is kind of like a Western cowboy romance that has captivated the hearts of a lot of social media influencers in Book Talk and Bookstagram. Emily Henry, of course, um, incredibly popular. This title, I think, is the most circulated title at the Los Angeles Public Library this year. They did a little Spotify wrapped sort of thing this week. And then The Rule Book by Sarah Adams is another popular one, a sports romance. Another trend that we've seen are an increase in neurodivergent characters and storylines. Sarah Grunder Ruiz is actually now a Raleigh-based author, so she might be somebody if you're looking for somebody to do an author talk in February. Um, she might be a good fit. Last call at the local. So opposites attract when Rain, a free-spirited American singer-songwriter with ADHD who moves to Ireland on a whim to busk, teams up with a charming Irishman, Jack, who has OCD, to revitalize his family's pub. Their connection grows as they bond over late night conversations and shared vulnerabilities. With its authentic portrayal of neurodivergent experiences, this book offers a heartfelt and refreshing love story. Talia Hibbert was mentioned in the chat. Eve Brown is a main character that's neurodivergent. Talia Hibbert is a Black British woman. So these titles are set in the UK. With both of them, they're set in different locales. I'm a huge fan of strong sense of place or a location that's I'm not always visiting. And so these are two titles that might open readers up to new worlds and experiences. And AlTonya will cover highlighting indie authors.
So I've just listed a few here. There are many more, but what I wanted to do with this are two things. One, I wanted to highlight someone that you guys, I don't know if you've heard of her or not, but her story is just one that I couldn't let this webinar pass without touching on just faintly. But first thing I want to say is, romance gets such a bad rap. You got people who give it the side eye, like, oh, I don't read that or whatever. But I hate that. I really just because romance has kept so many other genres afloat. It has allowed publishing houses to maintain. And the same thing goes for indie and self-publishing. Self-publishing used to be, oh gosh, self-published. What are you talking about? Now it's common. People do it. This is something that authors just love delving into, that the indie world. I want to highlight one of the authors on this list, Iris Bowling. She had said she would never go traditional because she wanted that freedom, that autonomy to be able to write her stories the way she saw fit. I've known Iris a very long time. She actually retired just before she turned 55 because her books were doing so well. She came in as a self-published unknown author. She has a huge following. If you don't have her in your collection, you need to get her in your collection. She's right in Virginia. She does lots of talks, book talks, visits. She had her own series greenlit, so has had a television series done, and all this is from someone who is independently published. So, please don't frown on the indie authors. Their work is amazing. Kristen Ashley, she's traditionally published now, but she started off and is probably still doing some independent writing, but she was independently published. So, I just wanted to put that out there. I don't know if you've heard of a lot of these authors, but if you haven't, give them a try. Give them a try. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Thank you, Dick. So these are some of my tips. Again, don't disparage the romance genre. Please just don't, because you know why? You may be a huge crime fiction fan, science fiction fan, and a romance lover comes up to your desk and asks you about romance, and you give them that thing. Well, guess what? next time they may not come to you to ask about crime fiction or science fiction because you've already put them down about something that they enjoy. So I mean, I'm talking about that really forcefully, but it happens so much. If you don't read the genre, that's fine. That's okay. But don't make people feel bad when they come up to you and ask you about stories and trying to find stuff in the genre. Okay. Writers in training push really good indie title suggestions as well as the traditional ones because once a reader, someone who's trying to write, starts reading romance and they're reading the things that are getting the traditional backing, they may feel a little bit intimidated, but to push in someone who is right alongside them, this is an indie author who is just like you, maybe trying to get that traditional contract, pushing those really good indie title suggestions, showing them how well the work can be done and giving them something to aspire to. That can be a gold mine for them as far as giving them a more well-rounded introduction into their craft. Um, Building inclusive collections, just put it on your radar. You don't have to just sit and say, I'm going to devote the whole month to this. But if you just very, subtly try to do that and keep your ear to the ground for authors who are writing in these different different ethnicities, you know, make a note of it and try to find out who's reading them. I'm sharing some information with Devin that she'll share with you about blogs that focus in on authors who are writing African American, Asian American, Hispanic, just across the board. So it's just keeping your mind open to pulling these authors in can be great for your collections, and listen to your readers. And last, don't disparage the romance genre. Thank you. These are some social platforms that you will find other authors writing for. As I said, indie, a lot of people are writing in different spaces. You may not just find their work on their publisher's site. You'll find them in different places. One I put here, Kindle Bella. I don't know how much you guys know about Kindle Bella. You don't really need to know anything now because Kindle Bella is ending. They're closing it down. This was an Amazon backed initiative that it didn't take off the way that they thought it would. However, the authors were really invested in it. I just wanted to see if I could do it again, me trying to do something, and I had a fun time with this. I had never serialized any titles before. Just one chapter coming out like an episode. I had a great time with it. So now that it's ending, I'm putting these platforms here so that you know that there are other spaces that your readers may be interested in knowing about where their favorite author might be putting out work, especially if they're reading a series and they're at that point, that horrifying point when the author hadn't put out the next book in the series yet, but they may want to read some stuff. You can direct them to some of these platforms. The eye up there in the corner, top right corner, that's called Inspired. It's one that I just heard about on some of the platforms that I follow that's talking about what's going on with Kindle and where authors are going to be pushing their work. Um, the R in the middle, that's Radish Fiction. I actually write for them. They used to approach authors. When I started writing for them, they approached me about coming and putting some work out. Now they allow authors to request to apply. So you never know who you may find there. And a lot of those tropes Devin mentioned and more, bully romances, reverse harem, all that kind of stuff, they just go on and on. You can find a lot of that there. But these are some, if you haven't heard of them, give them a try. Patreon. Yep, exactly. Exactly. So there are lots. Thank you. Um, and then this slide is all over the place. I actually made a typo here. Here are some titles. I meant to say here are some authors. So I just kind of put authors there that if you haven't heard of them, they're ones that you may want to do a deeper dive into finding more out about their work. Maureen Smith and Delaney Diamond are African American romance authors, interracial romantic suspense, contemporary romance, Alexandria House. Wayne Jordan at the bottom, he is a African American male romance author. And when I was putting him in the system to find other people, newer writers that are coming up like him, I didn't find anything. That doesn't mean that there's nothing, but I add these authors in, Asian American authors like Anne Lang, to give you a sense of starting your base, starting those anchors and building from there. You find someone who writes like this, and then someone who's newer that writes like that person, and that can be a great opportunity and a window for you to start building that collection. And then I put the Forever She Reads blog here because, as I said, I'm sharing some spreadsheets, some information that I've collected with Devin, as far as reviewers who have blogs that may help you to definitely start building those collections as well. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to jump into using Novelist. So I wanted to start off with just showing screenshots of the grab and go reading list. These are on the homepage on the left-hand side, and they're arranged by age range. So here are the ones for adult romance. On the left here, ostentatious, so very much in the vein of Jane Austen, Regency romances, Love in a Small Town, paranormal romance, sports romances. These are good for getting you started, and they're helpful for a patron who, you know, identifies what subgenres they like, and you can kind of print out these lists and walk around the library or look up titles in the catalog. For teen romance, you'll see different focus for these. So cold weather, warm hearts, romantic comedies, contemporary romance, LGBTQ romance as well, YA romance. And then the genre guides are great. So if you want to dive deep into romance and you don't know much about the genre, I think that these are great touchstones in the platform. So what you have with these is a description of the genre, some top themes that you can click on those links and start searching for titles that meet those themes, why readers like romance, some key authors to watch, and then tips for marketing these genres to those patrons. What you'll notice with the genre guide romance for adults is friends to lovers is the trope, but in YA romance, it's called, or enemies to lovers. In YA romance, it's called hating to dating. And then in YA romance, the theme is called falling for a friend. So those differences are to denote that those are for YA romance, different content. I'll also show you how to search by appeal. If you need like a landing base in the platform, the Story Elements Index is my go-to because it lists every single genre and subgenre used to categorize titles and novelists, as well as all the themes and appeals. And I think if you really want to drill down into the genre, looking at the themes and appeals is important because then you're able to help with highly specific tastes and you can see appeals based on the romantic content of titles. So if for patrons who are looking for something a little bit more chaste, you can use those appeals and I'll show you what that looks like. And then for patrons who might be looking for something more explicit, they can use those appeals and combinations of them. So this is an example of an advanced search where you, in the advanced search section, I put the theme Love in a Small Town and then the appeal suspenseful to find a genre blend. And it showed me Wolf Song by TJ Klune, which is a, sci-fi fantasy romance. I put in the appeals banter-filled and feel-good, and I found this recent romance from UK author David Nichols called You Are Here that is about adults who are kind of around their 40s and 50s, and it's more of like a second chance kind of romance, very feel good. So we're going to jump into the platform now. There we go. All right, so here is the homepage for Novelist. As I mentioned, finding romance here. The for fans of section's great. So for fans of Colleen Hoover or for fans of Bridgerton, or for fans of Hallmark holiday movies, you can use these for fans of lists to build them to craft a display or a shelf talker or recommended reads list. This is a great way to bring patrons in who know that they love Bridgerton, binged it as soon as the latest season came out, and then you can recommend new titles like The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen or Infamous by Lex Croucher. So that's a good starting point. But then I would recommend going into these genre guides for more detail. So here, what I'll do is check the box for teen just to find that YA romance genre guide. Let's see here, romance for teens. And these genre guides are written by novelist staff or librarians around the country. Um, these top themes like Falling for a Friend, some key titles. So Talia Hibbert's also written YA romance. Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow, Heartstopper, which has been adapted into a Netflix series. And then some key authors like Casey McQuiston, Zendaya Menon, Nicola Yoon, Foundations like Meg Cabot, Walter Dean Myers, Vampire Diaries series. And then How Do I Help and Market to Teen Romance Fans? Giving some tips here and then some searches to try. One thing to keep in mind with marketing to teens and YA romance, something that's come up with libraries is making those, complex choices about what to market. Like, I think it's important, even though A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas is very popular, it's definitely on the seamier side. So it's probably not something that I would necessarily put in a YA romance display. And those sorts of difficult conversations have come up in libraries. And so it's helpful to have novelists to show you like age appropriate titles and then using the descriptions for certain titles to gauge, do I want to put this in a book display? Is this part of a program? And then if you click on the particular title, I find these starred reviews are incredibly helpful. And then seeing how it's categorized. You can also use that search for more feature, which I think is helpful if you're looking for more LGBTQ romances, and then using some of the subject categories as well. I'm going to jump back up to the top. If you ever need to clear your search in Novelist, you can click on that logo on the left-hand side. So the story elements index. This is nice because you don't need to memorize every single appeal used for romance in Novelist. That would be crazy and incredibly time-consuming and oppressive. But if you scroll through here, this is the heat index. So this is the set of appeal terms that Novelist uses to categorize the romantic content of books. If you have your patrons who are specifically looking for something on the chase side, what you can do is click on chase and then use the limiters on the left-hand side. So if you're looking for titles that have been published in the last 4 years, you can narrow this list down. I like using, location. If they want a more chase romance that's set in North Carolina, we have 9 different titles to explore. And then you can kind of click on the description to find more read-alikes. So Bookshop by the Sea by Denise Hunter, Christian romance, the write-up, and then the read-alikes on the right-hand side. So read-alikes for Christian romance might not always be Christian romance themselves, like Effie Olsen Summer Special by Rochelle Billow is not a Christian romance, or The Ex-Vows. But these might be nice. And what's good is if you click view all for read-alikes, you can see why they've been selected and thumbs up, thumbs down. So This example of Bookshop by the Sea is a Christian romance that's a little bit more on the contemporary side. And you can print these out. Thumbs up, thumbs down, those read-alikes. Novelist always takes those feedback, that user feedback into account. What I would also recommend doing is looking at the story elements index by theme as well. So what's nice about the themes is they're categorized by their subgenres. So if we're going to jump down to realistic genre, you can find themes for Christian fiction. So if you have your patrons who are fans of Christian romance, you can use Test of Faith. That's a common one in Christian romance. You can use some of these general ones, but there's also romance-specific ones like Together Again, Home Again, Love Abroad, Time Travel Romance, Marriage of Convenience, Captive Hearts. So you can click on these and then narrow down as well. I like, let's see here. I'll jump to Fake Relationship as an example. And then obviously Emily Henry comes up. And then using that publication date is helpful. You can add in starred reviews or award winners by checking that box and then updating results. And then you can change this list. These are relevant, but you can also change it to like the newest titles to see which ones have come up most recently, like The Breakup Pact came out in August. And you'll also see Novelist does include forthcoming titles, so titles that have yet to be released, to kind of keep them on your radar. One thing that's useful is if you go to browse by genre, you can select romance and see what's new and popular in these different subgenres. So this is a nice way to kind of browse. If your catalog is linked to Novelist, this is a great way for patrons to explore their own tastes, and you can kind of hover over and see the description, and you can add it to your folder if you want to link your Google account to Novelist. That's something you can do by signing in. And then there's some additional lists on the right-hand side. So if you want a list for romantasy, you can click on that and see some titles like Jennifer Armentrout's included here, Carissa Broadbent, and then additional lists are here, but more for the fantasy side of romantasy. So let's see here. One thing to take a look at with the advanced search is you can use the media mentions feature. So if you have patrons who are trying to remember a romance that was mentioned on the Today Show, you can pull up the Today Show, or let's say a romance that was included in Reese Witherspoon's book club. You can put in GN romance and search. This is a question that's come up, I feel like, at every library when patrons ask, I've seen this book that was mentioned on the Today Show, but I can't remember the author. And you can see Slow Dance by Rainbow Rowell was mentioned on the Today Show. It came out this year. Or it was part of Reese Witherspoon's book club and came out this year. Apologies for that. I'm going to go back and clear my search. And then I do want to show you, if you go to browse by award winners, you can find some romance awards. You click on romance, and then I like to choose sort by date newest, so you find the latest winners. So this is one, the Willa Literary Awards are granted to outstanding books by female authors featuring stories set in the West. So this might be a good pick for a cowboy romance or a Western, romantic Western. These awards are judged by a panel of professional librarians and sponsored by the nonprofit Women Writing the West. So you can see some of the recent ones. And then browse by audiobooks. Audiobooks are another medium or format that romance fans love. As I mentioned earlier, I listened to an Emily Henry book this fall and really enjoyed the narration. So I can search and see all these audiobook recommendations for romance, and then I can limit these to say which are audiobook recommendations from the last year, and see a couple here, like Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, the audiobook recommendation, and see some audiobook listen-alikes where it's sharing a couple of different recommendations here. And then I'll head back and jump up to the top. All right. So one thing that I do want to cover in the time that we have are helping readers some tips. Best practices, be approachable and ready to engage. There's no judgment in reader's advisory. It's something that obviously AlTonya had mentioned earlier in this session. Romance readers tend to be avid ones, so keep in mind lesser known authors and titles for those who feel like they've read everything. We came up with some questions to ask readers when they're having a conversation with you on the desk and looking for recommendations, or maybe asking you after a book club. What titles or series are you waiting on? That's a great way to come up with read-alikes for buzzy books. What level of romantic intensity, using the appeals in novelists to search based on romantic intensity, and letting patrons know if you're kind of like have built a relationship with them that they can use those appeals and empower them to use the platform. Are you in the mood for an escape from reality or something that feels a little bit more thought-provoking? Knowing based on like the tone, potentially being a little bit more funny or on the serious side, and then format. We have some great romance titles and rom-coms and Hoopla. A lot of those titles were in RB Digital and were transferred over. I love using the Hoopla app, and I find that the hold period is much shorter than audiobooks in Libby. I'm not waiting several weeks for something. I'm often waiting only a few days. And I'll include some audiobooks from Hoopla in the handout. Other media, so adaptations are important, but also keeping an eye on kind of what's popular and finding read-alikes based on them. So Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston is popular. Potentially recommending her second title would be good that came out this year. Past Lives is a little bit more of a serious romance about second chances and regrets. So finding titles that kind of fit that popular movie that came out last year is good. And then knowing that Funny Story will be adapted into a movie. And so you're going to have your patrons who are requesting that title. So maybe potentially having a couple of copies of Funny Story is a good idea. For TV, Bridgerton, but also Heartstopper on Netflix. Sue Bird and her partner, her wife, Megan Rapinoe, are adapting a sports romance called Cleat Cute that's coming to Netflix. So keeping an eye on some of those and knowing that, as patrons are streaming things on Netflix and other services, they might be looking for fiction titles that complement some of their own interests in other media. Some podcasts to look out for. Fated Mates is a really popular romance novel podcast. Heaving Bosoms, When in Romance, and the Black Romance podcast. We've linked to those in the handout. And then some other readers advisory podcasts that I love. Professional Book Nerds is one that's run by staff at Overdrive, and they do deep dives into romance subgenres and interview authors. And I find their recommendations are really helpful. Some awards that you can find in Novelist, the Vivian Awards, Rusa Reading List. And then we mentioned She Reads Romance Books. Romantic Times or RT book reviews are great. And then I do want to highlight AART Genre Study. This was something that was recommended to me earlier this year. So this is a group based in Illinois that every year they focus on a different genre, and they put their notes and slides up on this website. This year they're doing relationship fiction, and they have like upcoming meetings where they'll share notes and recommended titles, but they're covering romance and mystery in August. I've found going through their backlog of titles is really helpful, and they're often kind of discussing the intricacies of certain genres. So if you're looking for a deep dive, I've used this as a resource. Marketing tips, I'm going to jump through these. Reach out to your local bookstore, invite regional authors. Here are different examples of how libraries have done it. Greensboro Public Library always does romance themed programming during the month of February. As you're planning things for February in the spring, thinking through different ways that you can do this, like blind date with a book or an author talk. And then some North Carolina-based romance authors. So Sarah Dessen is a YA author, particularly popular. Sarah Grinder Ruiz is based in Raleigh. Amy Clipston is based in North Carolina. Kennedy Ryan's a UNC alum. So is Christy Woodson Harvey. And then Erica Marks writes a lot of holiday romance. So here are a couple of authors. As I mentioned in yesterday's webinar on mystery thriller, the worst that an author can say is no. And often I think they're really delighted by the invitation and hopeful to make it work. Tips for displays, so focusing on appeal or theme. I gathered a couple. So this cowboy romance one, I really like the spice scale used on that display in the right corner. And then it links to they have an event flyer for an author talk with Allie Hazelwood, it looks like. But that's a really great way for people to explore their taste, get an idea of content level up front. And then I really like the blind date with a book. I think that's something that a lot of libraries do. And AlTonya was saying that she might incorporate that into some programming in the spring. Another thing that I recommend is read-alikes for mainstream titles because those big name authors do not need discovery as much. I think Emily Henry has become part of the canon, and finding some contemporaries that are similar is a good strategy for the next year. Same with Abby Jimenez, Allie Hazelwood. They've become pretty well known. Shelf talkers and book lists are great, and then book club picks. I'm seeing so many member libraries around the state building in romance book clubs, and that is a great way to make your romance fans in the library feel comfortable and excited to discuss the genre that they love. QR codes next to book displays. I've seen this. You can link to recommended reads lists and novelists. It's a nice way to encourage usage of the platform for patrons, linking the genre guides as well. You can order glossy posters and materials through us that Novelist creates and then ships to you, and you can hand them out at book clubs, author talks, reading challenges. Target readers with print, you can order bookmarks from Novelist and just include them in holds or have them by the service desk or by book displays or in book bundles. But this is a nice way to get patrons thinking about the platform and using it. One thing to take a look at is look at your stats and figure out kind of like what series are popular amongst your readers, and then provide recommendations accordingly. So romantasy, I included a couple here that have come up, but then with Christian romance, knowing that I've traveled to a bunch of member libraries and Christian romance is popular. Here are some series read-alikes. Looking at Libby and then just anecdotes, like listening to your readers, hearing what titles they're interested in is a great way to build a collection that's representative of people's tastes. Link to your catalog if your library has not set up your catalog with Novelist. I've included the support email for that in the handout. The nice thing about this is readers can immediately see what's available, and then they're more inclined to use the platform because then they know how many titles or copies are available and what's been available, what's been checked out, and then go directly to the catalog to put a hold on a title. Making Novelist findable on your website is also a good tip for increasing usage of the platform and encouraging your romance readers to take advantage of it. Here are a couple of different strategies, focusing on different audiences. So your diehard fans of the genre, your mood readers who are looking for a change of pace. I'm way more of a mood reader who loves an engrossing setting. So I included some vacation reads like Wanderlust by Elle Everhart. And then your readers waiting for high holds items. So among the NC Live team, we have some staff members who love a buzzy book. As soon as Funny Story by Emily Henry came out, they put a hold on it. So for your patrons who, libraries set up different formats like your Sizzlers section or your Lucky Day reads, having some of those popular titles up in a display can be a helpful way to encourage circulation. And then I've included a few hidden gems at the top for patrons who are looking for a change of pace. Now, I wanted to pause and make sure in the time that we have left, any questions? Feel free to send them in the chat. AlTonya, I've included your email in case folks want to reach out to you afterwards, but always know that we are an email away and happy to talk. I know in the chat earlier, we had a recommendation for a webinar idea. Would love a seminar on the history of romance as a genre and the general disparagement of novels throughout history, honestly. And Marissa sharing that E.E. Lawrence taught a reading romance in the library class at the University of Illinois and has publications on romance reading. Maybe EE would be willing to do a future PDA webinar. So PDA is the Professional Development Alliance that NC Live is a part of with Carly, which is the Illinois Library Consortium for Academic Libraries. And we meet regularly to plan programs and offer things that are representative of what you love and want to learn. Oh, yeah. Awesome. Thank you for including that link, Marissa. We have Tara sharing. It seems like I do like romance more than I thought. Some of the crossover ones I didn't even consider as romance. Oh, I'm so glad.
Yay.
Yay.
Oh. Thank you guys so much for attending. I never need a reason to talk romance, and this has been a lot of fun. So thank you so much. And anytime, please reach out anytime with any questions, comments, whatever. And if you do put on that romance talk, reading romance in the library, if you do get a chance to, I want to be there.
Yeah. So I will let you know. I think that's a great idea.
Yes.
Folks, AlTonya, thank you so much for co-hosting this with me. Always a
Yeah,
pleasure to lead
absolutely.
webinars with you. Folks, keep an eye out for the follow-up email that I'll send tomorrow with the recording, the slides, the handout, and the feedback survey. So send us your suggestions for future webinars. I hope you all have a great rest of your week and Thursday. And I hope to see you at an NC Live webinar again soon.